If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah,
Good vibes.
blah.
Good vibes.
Blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. Coming at you back in the studio, back in Canada, back in Alberta. Last week, I guess, when did the show come out on the right day last week? It did, right?
I think so.
Maybe just late in the day. I almost didn't get to it, and I was like, fuck it, I had to power it out, because you feel like you're gonna be all right. Because it wasn't even that late, I got to town. It was pretty much like drive 8.5 hours and then fucking get.
Oh, that was the first day of the scab ones, yeah.
Get a quick break to scarf down some quick dinner and then out the door again to drive another hour and a half to Steamboat Rock. Not Steamboat Rock.
Steptoe Butte.
And then drive back. So it was just like 12.5 hours of driving the first day.
Yeah.
With a small little intervals in between for the last few hours. So it was, you just had enough. My eyes start to hurt. I get a headache from the eyes. And
Yeah, totally.
I never used to get all that shit, dude. I used to drive 20 hours straight and be all right. Now I'm just sort of bagged after 10, I'm just like,
totally. I get like that too, yeah. Especially if some of it's at night. Like me, night driving now is way worse than I used to be when I was younger. I couldn't care less. Now I don't want to be driving at night. Long distances.
I don't mind at night as long as it's not raining.
Yeah.
And it's better when it's flat and straight. I mean, that's the other thing you start to notice after 20 years in Alberta is you get into some of these places and, you're driving. You're like turning constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Like I took that back way home, dude, and it's like there's no downtime. There's no time to check the phone. There's nothing. Like I'm from, I can be like checking Facebook and fucking reading emails. And I mean, I know it's not good. I'm not saying this is great, but where I live, I can
straight and flat. Yeah,
dude, I can press that button in my truck and it just stays between the lines. So it's just like I don't trust it. I don't use it, but you can turn it on as your backup plan.
Yeah.
Because I'm always paying attention, I'm a distracted driver. Get over it. Sorry. But I tend to text a lot and email a lot. And like I say, I'm in Alberta, dude. The roads are just straight for as far as you're going. That's it. Straight up. Like my drive from my shop to where my house is, I turn left once and then I turn right once. And other than those two turns,
that's about 45 minutes.
49 kilometers, man. Just fucking straight. 35 miles without, with turn out of stop sign. There's no fucking bends in the road. There's no like subtle slow turns, man. It's straight. It's fucking straight. I mean, people who aren't from here probably don't understand how straight the fucking roads are, but the entire province and your province as well are gridded up for prairies and road stuff. So it's
not technically
you couldn't have a crooked road, or you'd be going through someone's shit.
Didn't you listen to Terrence on JRE? I mean, it's not straight. There's no such thing as straight lines. Dude.
Yeah, there is such thing as straight lines. There's just no straight lines in nature, dude. Just in nature. Man can make straight lines. So.
Not truly straight.
Nice try, but you missed the part where he said in nature.
No, I got that, but I don't know.
They're not straight, though, because they're up and down a little bit.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of hills.
So that drive through BC was nice, though, eh? From Osoyoos north, then Osoyoos east.
Yeah, it took forever.
Yeah.
Just never fucking ended, because it must have taken 10 hours or 11 hours. And I thought it was only going to be a bit, but there's a huge line at the border.
Oh, really?
There's
Yeah.
only one lane open, dude. There's like 6 lanes there, and they've only got one. There's more lanes there than there is in fucking Coots to come into Canada.
Yeah.
Which kind of blew me away because it's sort of like in the middle of nowhere. It's not
So
like
you
by
should get
Seattle.
somewhat busy in the summer, I guess, but
Busy enough for 6 border lanes, man, when Alberta's like commercial port is only 4.
yeah, that is weird. Yeah.
It's the most I've ever seen. It's the most I've ever seen.
And a small border like that.
Yeah, the only place I've seen something comparable, actually, the ones in Sault Ste. Marie and to Sault, Michigan are big, but that's like from one city into another. There's tons of people going back and forth all day, every day.
Yeah.
And the shipyard's right there. But this is in the middle of nowhere, man. It don't make sense. It goes from like, I forget what the town on the other side is, but then it's a big Indian reserve right there. It's not divided highway on either side.
Wow.
Yeah, then they're all closed but one. Oh, and then there's a bus entry too. There's like a bus zone over there for back when there used to be some sort of like bus service that crossed the border internationally.
Going to the casino.
Oh, is there a casino there?
I don't know. I feel like there should be. I feel
It just kind of. There's only one lane open anyway, and they let me through without any trouble.
So you didn't get searched or anything, eh? That's
either way, neither way, neither way. They just
they didn't even mention it. Like, we're gonna let you go this time, but we're supposed to search you.
Didn't mention nothing. I think the jig's up.
So the flags are off. Flags are down.
Yeah, well, the last time when I came in last July, Buddy alluded to that. I had, he wouldn't give me a time limit, but he was sort of like, if you're doing any traveling in the next year, it's worth, because he gave me some numbers to call and all this shit. I'm like, dude, I'm not calling them numbers. It's like a waste of time. And he's like, well, there's a policy that every one of those to this number I've given you specifically have to be like, or is a website, actually, not a phone number. They have to be investigated. And they follow up and all this. And then I like got started and I was just like, fuck it. This is a pain in the ass. So I didn't do it. And they didn't search because they didn't search me on the way back from Texas, which was the first time in an airport that they just let me out. But that was a weird customs experience. Because we just got face scanned.
Yeah, I know. It's all automatic.
In that like hallway.
And you don't even really talk to a human about it. You just hand them your paper.
A single human, no. So they could have grabbed me then, I guess. But also we're on a very short connection. So it's like if they grab you, they've made you lose your flight. And then we got to Calgary and we were domestic already. So I was not using that as a sample,
Yeah, that's not a good sample, yeah.
But then, so I drove into Idaho and then came out from Washington into BC, and it was fine. I mean, the way down there, I was just laughing and joking with the guy because of my stickers on my truck. Like, they let you have guns up there? Just barely, bro. Just barely. Then on the way back, it was just, no, you got this. I think I brought a bunch of trees. I don't even know if I'm allowed to do that, but I did bring a bunch of trees, like hundreds.
Man, you're going to cause some kind of like some viral infection on your property or something.
Well, I think like I got them from shout out to Ian Thoreen, friend of the show. Ian, I got them from him and they're from like his property. So he's like nestled up against Canada. Dude's got like 600 acres right up against Canada.
Wow.
So we could
like up against Canada.
Well, it's pretty close because it's 60
more west.
60 miles north of Seattle. More west.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that's what I mean by west over Seattle. I thought it was closer to Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it's got to be right up against the border, 60 miles north of Seattle. I shouldn't. I'm like doxing him. Sorry, bro. It's a place to go when the shit hits the fan. Might have to sneak down. Anyway, give me a.
Whidbey. I used to go there as a kid all the time. We'd go to Whidbey Island and Mount Vernon.
Yeah, that's all gonna be real close to you, right? Where you like Vancouver?
Yeah,
like an hour.
It was 3. I think it was a 3-hour drive down to Seattle.
That's not bad. So anyway, I got a bunch of trees. I'm gonna plant some around here. Take the rest out in the bush and plant them. Maybe I definitely. I don't. I think I have like 100 and some trees. I don't have room for 100 and some trees. I'm in the plains, and I gotta grow grass for horses and stuff. But I do. There's a couple spots down the side of the driveway where there could be some nicely placed trees, and I don't want to waste them. So I think I'll just take the others out someplace and plant
Well,
them.
maybe whoa. I mean, maybe I could use some.
Yeah, sure. I'll save you some. I don't know how.
Send me a picture.
They're all like some sort of a pine tree or something, you know.
Okay, yeah. Send me a picture. Maybe
I
I'll
want to do 10 or 20 down the driveway, I think, and then, like I said, I don't want to kill any of them, so I'll just take the rest and plant them somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just go plant them in the bush here, I guess. That's probably what I'll do. Actually, is just go plant them in amongst the part of the property that's all treed already. Man, it's raining like crazy. The grass is growing. It's green. It's green, baby.
Glad you had a good trip though, and it wasn't raining there. It was all nice and sunny for you, and everybody.
It was windy. It was the windiest one ever.
I don't know if I don't think you were there the time that we had to hunker down beside the big turbine on the dam.
Yeah, we hunkered down beside the turbine at the dam again.
Oh, really?
You can't even hunker inside the turbine because it's like open at the top. So you have to hunker up against that little wall there.
Yeah. And
I had only brought one table.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Because I was like, well, the Scavlands, there's tons of picnic tables everywhere. So what's the point on traveling with them? Then, of course, because even that place has a bunch of places you could do it no problem if it wasn't for the wind.
Yeah.
But the wind was crazy every day. At the cliffs, it was crazy. I was worried someone was going to get blown off. And they still went and did that long hike where they come up the rock blade and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But everyone was fine. We seen a rattlesnake. We did see a rattlesnake. We see more of those.
Looked pretty big.
It did look pretty big. It looked pretty big. I didn't get anywhere near it.
Was it rattling or had it evolved to not rattle?
No. You know what, dude? I was just reading a thing just the other day that said that they stepped on 291 rattlesnakes with a fake foot. And the snake only bit 6 times.
Well, that's interesting.
The other 290 times it tried to get away or like did get scurry off. But the reason I brought it up is because it said the rattle don't mean shit. If they said almost all the bites happen because you've startled it, and it doesn't rattle, just bang. So, but isn't that interesting? Only 6 bites out of 290 some steps.
Yeah.
So these are all different snakes too. All different snakes, not the same snake. Different snakes. They just make his fake foot. They go find rattlesnakes and they step on it like you would step on it if you were walking. And
but I mean, isn't there
95 or 96 or 97% of the time they don't want to bite you. So get this. And then out of the 6 bites, only 4 released venom.
But isn't it a little weird because isn't there a human interaction there if somebody's holding a fake boot? Like, I mean, how they must sense that there's somebody there. Like,
well, I don't know what would be the difference to the snake because you would be there if you stepped on it.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Because I think that you go out, you see a snake, you're like, all right, there's one, go step on it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Weird.
So, and it's the little ones you got to watch out for. They're a little more bitey. The older ones are even more apt to just wander off. So I don't know. I wasn't even looking for snake stuff. I just stumbled upon that on Facebook. And we had just seen a rattlesnake. Like we were in snake country the whole time. So, I was like, ooh, rattlesnake post. I'm going to read that. Don't suck out the poison. Don't cut out the poison. And just hike over to the rattlesnakes specifically. You just hike over to just go back, go find yourself a hospital.
So just go. You got enough time to get to the hospital and
seem to be there. Like, don't panic and just go to the hospital. Hike out. You'll be fine. So, I mean, I'd just rather not get bit by a fucking snake. But Seems like it seems a lot harder to get bit by a rattlesnake than I thought it would be. My kind of take was that if I walk anywhere within fucking 5 feet of a snake out there, it's coming at me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But
So this is an amazing chat with the Archivist. It's been years since I've heard about him on Greg's show, and it's good that we finally had him on. Fantastic work. It really fits in with some of the stuff we talk about. And I mean, I was gonna mention more to him about that Terrence episode, because Terrence does talk. I mean, man, he was going quite a bit on the JRE there. Did you watch that?
well, I didn't watch it. I listened to it.
You listened to it.
It was
so-
weird to me because it got bookended by like Randall Carlson's moon talk to this Archivist stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's all talking about plasma and that kind of stuff. So, I've been hearing a lot about plasma for a few days now.
Yeah, exactly.
And for weird electrical phenomena to fuck shit up.
And that's why I was going to mention the Cosmic Summit, because I mean, George Howard tweeted trying to get like Terrence's attention, like, because I think it really fits in with Malcolm Bendall's work. Like Terrence talked about that whole period of periodic table, and I mean, Bendall's got his whole thing too, and I really think they're talking about the same thing, just coming at it from different angles. I'm pretty sure their theories would just like support each other. Really interesting.
I want the gun that doesn't need bullets.
The lightning gun?
A lightning gun. I need a lightning gun. But the lightning gun could be the thunderstorm generator, possibly, if you just attached another end to it.
Yeah, interesting.
So it is interesting.
So that's from June 14th
That
to
being
the.
said, that could all be bullshit, and I would not know.
Yeah, it's hard, but I just don't think,
You could be totally spinning yarns, and I just wouldn't know. I don't know enough to know.
But it's weird because
he said a bunch of shit that made me think, and growing Earth, and his whole rant,
expanding Earth,
tied through expanding Earth. What did I say?
Growing Earth,
same thing. I hadn't considered them being like balloons before, but that would make a bunch of sense. But when he's talking about energy coming in at the North Poles and leaving through the equator, that's why the equator's bulging, not because of the spin. That, dude, when I was really going into that paraproduction stuff, I was equating it to even how some mountain ranges could be formed, because that's where the fucking the matter that's being created via the paraproduction process is trying to exit. It's adding matter to those points specifically. Yeah, and he's just saying, using that my sort of same thought at the equator, which is kind of neat, because I abandoned that whole thing because I thought it was just crazy stoner stuff. I probably still have it in my notes someplace.
Yeah, like you said, it was like weaving a thread through all of some of our past episodes. I mean, we had Dale Pond on, who was talking about Keely's work and the resonance chambers and the electric universe stuff, and the expanding Earth with Neil Adams, all of like Nassim Harriman and that whole group. I mean, he was talking about the size of the proton, or was it a photon or a proton? I can't remember, which is kind of what Nassim was working on. I mean, it really just feels like
the electric universe.
Yeah,
kind of too. I mean, that all, a lot of it sort of resonates. It really does. The idea of gravity being an after effect of electricity makes sense to me.
Yeah. So we're going to see lots of that stuff. I mean, imagine if he could make Cosmic Summit. I mean, that'd be great if him and Randall could talk. I mean, have that classroom. There's a classroom event on June 17th. Imagine with Malcolm and him in a classroom. I mean, going over all this stuff.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I might have to. Well, we could get the thing for free, I guess, right?
Yeah. Probably. Yeah, we can get a video pass. Yeah, so
I might want to watch it later when I get back from the Tychos thing. But some of that stuff kind of fits in with the Tychos model too.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I was thinking about that.
They could all be looking at the same sort of problems,
Yeah. Which boils down to the ether he kept talking about. And that's what, the other thing is he had that spiritual experience, right? Like, I mean, this is the other thing is he's been sort of like, I mean, I don't want to use the word chosen, but he definitely, he's getting some divine inspiration for that, just like Malcolm and just like the Archivist too. I mean, the Archivist, when he has these like epiphanies, these thoughts, he goes after it and he searches for it. I mean, and he had the NDE and the OBE as well. I mean, I didn't even know that when I was sort of booking Archivist. I just found out later that, how many of our guests have had that, that crazy life-changing spiritual experience that led them to their work, their life's work. I mean, how can society compete with that? That's why I think we're going to win,
He also said he was filming everyone was having sex with, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. That was a bit
even bring up.
Yeah.
Keep that to yourself. I hope it's not just for some weird movie he's working on in his head.
Imagine, no, it just was way too complex to me. I mean, even though he's a good actor, I just don't see it
or something.
I just don't see it. Imagine that if this was like a viral ad for a movie that later on comes out.
Even Rogan didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody knew. It was like the best viral marketing ad Hollywood ever did.
Well, that would still be some genius nigga shit, wouldn't it? If he even did that, I would have to be like, damn, man, you got me. You got me. The Super Troll.
So at Cosmic Summit, we've got, I'm just going to read all the speakers here because this is important. It's coming up in a few weeks. I'm going for sure. I've booked my tickets. I'm going to see a bunch of friends there and watch all these presentations. Robert Schock, Randall Carlson, Johanna James, Scott Wolter, Praveen Mohan, Ben Van Kerkwick, Hugh Newman, Luke Caverns, Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe, Micah Hanks, Haley Ramsey, Russ Allen, Dr. Stephen Collins, Timothy Hogan, Dr. I. Randolph Daniel, Chris Cottrell, Dr. Joanne Ballard, Bob Greenier, Jordan Collin, Dr. Alan West, Dan Warren, Malcolm Bendall, Adam Young, and Robert Temple. I mean, geez, I wanted to ask him about Temple's book today too, because it's all about plasma. And I wondered if the Archivist has listened to that book. I mean, that's just a game changer as well. Holy, I mean,
Hanks is going.
Yeah. I mean, imagine Bob Greenier in there too with them. I mean, imagine Bob Greenier, Malcolm and Terrence and what?
I don't know who that is.
He's just the cold fusion guy. Like,
it's going to be weird seeing Micah. I'm glad I'm not going because it'd be awkward when the guy hasn't answered my text in a year and a half. Hey.
So use coupon code CS as in Cosmic Summit 5184. That'll give you 15% off, which is a pretty good chunk. It's like $100 off the main ticket. And we don't get a chunk of that. I mean, you could always donate to the show if you would like. We're just sort of helping out. I mean, I do get a pass, so I'm going for no charge. So there's that. But yeah, get your tickets now.
I'm interested in a Micah Hanks report. And
I can't wait to see Micah.
I also want to get Praveen on the show. I've been emailing back and forth with his assistant. So
yeah, I tried a while ago and I couldn't get a hold of him. So, but if you want me, I can try to get Praveen on before the summit. I'm trying to get Jordan. Jordan's going to come on, I think.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be right. So only one-time donation this week.
All right.
Which is it is what it is. Let's double check that. But it is there's no note. Or there might have been a note, actually.
Oh, geez. Paul probably emailed me and he expects me to read it.
He might have emailed you because the note from me was just like
no, I didn't get it.
Today? Today's the 21st, right?
20th.
20th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we got notification. There we go. 2 one-time donations to mention, actually.
Nice.
From Trevor, our buddy Trevor, gave us $33. 33. No.
Awesome. Thanks, Trevor.
He did say in the chats that he was going to do that. He mentioned it in our chat room and he was going to give us a little bonus because he was enjoying the last few episodes. So
thanks, Trevor.
And then of course $100 from our buddy Paul. So I mean, huge. So Paul's been supporting huge lately. Appreciate it, buddy. We couldn't do it without you. Really couldn't. Wouldn't. So
Did you hear about YouTube? So did we get our YouTube back? Are we off of strike mode now? Out of strike mode. We're out of strike mode.
The strike is still active, but
they purged like 35,000 channels recently about misinformation. They're doing some cleanup, some pre-election cleanup. It's getting pretty crazy out there. I mean, we got another strike. We got a bunch of channels deleted. Actually, I want to make a post or something about that. If you could email me what the YouTube said about it. I guess dangerous conspiracy theories is now the thing. So, I mean, I hope that the archivist, I hope he has his stuff back. That we should have talked about this, about the platform he's using, but I hope he's putting his videos, like I hope he's backing up his videos, and I hope he's putting them on Rumble too, or wherever else, because, I just don't trust YouTube, even for like a pretty tame channel like his. He's still pushing back on the mainstream paradigm. I mean, you never know when the goalposts, they're constantly moving. So
one was dangerous conspiracy theories. That is one. Let me see who there was, because we've got two lately, two different ones.
And now they just go back to these old, like they're just doing an AI crawl through the catalog for a new thing to it's like they've just figured out another way to get a bunch of people. So then they do a crawl.
Harmful conspiracy theories.
Oh, I thought it was dangerous. Harmful
conspiracy theories. And then the other one is violent criminal organizations policy was another one.
So, I mean,
May 4th was harmful conspiracy theories again.
See, I think that's the new election crawl they're doing. They're doing the
April 2nd was medical misinformation. I think once I get back to here, it's all medical misinformation. So sometime between April and now, it went from being, see, even this one, medical misinformation. It was all medical misinformation until May. Then
and now it's harmful.
Beginning of May, it started being harmful conspiracy theories.
And I'm telling you, it's election related, because one of them was about Keck, and it was about that whole synchronistic Keck one we had from 2016 or 2017. It goes way back. And it was, I seem to think that was a pretty tame one, but I haven't listened to it in many, many years. So, but that's harmful now. So, but that's election related, right?
Yeah. Well, that was probably even further than that. I mean, shit, that thing came out.
Maybe that's one of the 35,000 that
episode 203.
203. Wow. So what was that, like early 2016?
Yeah, probably 2015, 2016. Yeah, probably 2016. Sounds right.
So the point is, it's like, we need your help disseminating the show, talking about it with friends. Not that YouTube's, I mean, we're mainly an audio podcast, but YouTube does help with search algos and stuff, and with, getting it out there for a whole different audience, right? So it's a constant battle.
Man, I did another IQ test. I'd done one like 20 years ago, and I dropped 13 points.
Wow. Is it the same one, or?
No. Do you think a different test will give me a different result?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different types.
I'm hoping I didn't get stupider.
Maybe.
I got smarter.
Maybe you've been radicalized
into being dumb.
Into being dumb, yeah.
Mostly just pattern recognition.
You've been dumbed down.
It's all pattern recognition.
I know, it's weird.
But I was 155 20 years ago.
That's what we do on the show. I mean, you'd think you'd be all practiced up. I mean, we just look for patterns.
Yeah, well, I went from 155 down to 142.
Wow.
So we should track it, and I'll do another one in 10 years and see if I'm down into 127 or something.
Yeah. All right.
Or maybe I could get it to go the other way. Maybe it's from all the weed.
How long does that take to do?
9 minutes. I think it was supposed to take longer.
I don't know if I trust that. I mean, I was doing comprehensive testing. It was hours and hours every day for a while, back in 1990.
Yeah, I did that in the early 90s too. We did them. They were called PSATs. In grade
No,
8.
this was outside of school. This was like aptitude testing kind of thing.
How'd you do?
Well, I'm pretty good. I mean, I think I was pretty good. You know, was
What was
lots
your
of
IQ?
potential. Lots of potential.
Don't we all have lots of potential? Everyone has lots of potential, bro.
It was like industrial design came up as a big one.
Oh, when I did that one, it was all math shit.
Yeah.
It's weird because I'm not crazy about math.
Yeah.
It does kind of come naturally, I guess, like second, like almost like a language.
Yeah.
Just sort of math makes sense to me. That doesn't seem to make sense. The weird thing is everyone freaks out about like the Common Core math.
And that's how you do it in your head.
That's how I've been doing math in my head the whole fucking time. Like that's how I can break down those problems quickly. Is I'll take this to this, this to this, this to this,
And then
do that, and then add that crap on at the end, and away we go. So
I think I do it like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just weird to read it or to do it like that. But you can't make other people do math like that. I really don't think you can. I think it's like there's probably a few different ways people are doing it, you know?
So, like, for example, if you're multiplying like 5 by, what would it be, like 13 by 12 or something, you could multiply like 12 by 10 and then 12 by 3.
By 12 I would just do because 12s are like a pretty standard table. Because 12 times 12 is 144. So then you just add 12 to that and you get 156.
No, yeah.
But if it was like 17.
But that's the same thing. You just did it right there, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I did 12 times 12 and then added on the
standard one and then added the little piece later,
yeah.
right? So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did. You got me. Busted. Anyway.
Common Core busted. So is 1 times 1 2 then?
I don't think so. I don't see how that's possible.
You know, that's what's going around with Terrence.
1 times 1 might be something weird though, like 1.001 or something.
Yeah, Terrence is breaking the math.
But
breaking the math paradigm.
2 times 1 is 2. So 1 times 1 should be 1, I guess. I mean, the thing that I have less problem with that math, it's the weird solar system math that I don't trust because, you know, it's like, well, I don't know. Wait. And then I didn't even know about fucking, and I had to dig into some of that stuff because he said it and I wasn't sure if it was true. And it is true. They're just like taking infinite numbers and making them 0, you know? They're just starting over to make problems work out. And not to mention just the whole dark energy, dark matter thing, black holes has never sat well with me. Just never fucking made sense to me. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense that you have to add a bunch of stuff that I can't see to make this bitch work.
Yeah. And what about the one where they average out all the theories and just call it what it is? Like, oh yeah, we'll just call it the average, the accumulated average.
This is why when Randall tells me the numbers are so close and they got knocked out by a cataclysm, I'm like, I think it's perfect. And that you guys can't measure it. That's my honest fucking opinion. It's my honest opinion.
So you think the measurement's off, not the actual, the measurement's off. Yeah.
I think the moon numbers might be right if it's real because I mean, I started pushing back with Randall and he just told me this whole different way I could go measure the moon by myself using like poles and shadows. Yeah, now, I can't remember what he said, but he said it with a level of authority that made me think that he wasn't making it up, or
Darren, you can just take a ball and
if you do this and you do this and you do this, you could measure the fucking width of the moon. Because I was like, well, maybe they just made up all those numbers, Randall. So I was like, fine, I'll give him that one. But once you get out to Jupiter, Saturn, stuff like that, you're gonna tell me they're measuring that orbit fucking perfectly? Come on. I don't think that's the case. I'd be shocked.
Well, and don't forget, the main reason why you're saying that too is because it's really close to a sacred sort of geometry or a sacred number. It's hard to believe, right? Number. And it kind of fits in with the way Terrence, like if I don't know if you saw him
the sacred numbers would all be based on where the electrical laws hold us, and that's why they're sacred numbers.
That's exactly that, and it's all for this this solar
Then,
system.
dude, that Terrence dude is spouting off some of the same numbers that Randall was just spouting off to me.
I know.
Like the day
And
before.
You should see the way they built Saturn, right? In the model, right? They just took his geez, now I can't remember. See, I'm already forgetting the names he was calling it. The
vortexes, pressure particles, and all that.
yeah,
stuff.
well, the pressure thing, but also he used the linchpin. Like he takes that one linchpin, right? And if you math that out, and it creates Saturn or whatever. I mean, I think that's what he did. Pretty interesting stuff. But I think that's what you're saying is that's all following that electric law.
Yeah, it's all electric. Too bad Wall's dead. Nice to have him back on.
I know Voight too. I think Douglas Voight too.
Yeah, there's a few. Hopefully that no more. Hopefully no more. All right. Was there anything else to get to?
Well, just we got that trip coming up in September, right? The
Gorge
with Randall
and the Radium Hot Spring.
And the Radium Hot Springs in November.
Yeah. Get your tickets for the Gorge soon if you want to come, because Randall's about to do some big stuff that I think is probably going to sell it out. So do it. Contact at thecabin.com. What else? I'm going to the UK. I think that trip's just about planned out. So shout out to Tony the Fag for lining that up for me and doing all that. Appreciate it. It worked out good because he came here and didn't have to worry about nothing. And who would have thought that I would be able to be able to call in that favor so quickly?
That's awesome. I'm kind of jealous.
Difference because me trying to figure that shit out is just a nightmare. So Tony he sent me a huge long email. This is stuff you could try and do. What do you do? Then I picked the things I wanted to do, and he's like, "Okay, I'll do everything else." So I'll go out there for a week and fucking hang out with him and his missus and my missus. Mike's coming over. Mike W's come to a lot of the CACs. He's actually going to come stay here for a few days, fly over with us, and leave his van here. And then I'm trying to get Mike K to come. Our buddy Mike the Liberal.
No, he's gonna join me at Cosmic Summit.
Is he?
Yeah. So see, this is good. Now we're splitting out.
Because he keeps texting me saying he might come to London.
Oh no, I think he's coming here.
Interesting.
Probably a much easier trip.
Yeah, it's like an hour drive.
Obviously, now that I'm going, he's gonna choose me this time.
Choose you? When did he choose me?
Oh, I don't know. You guys have been pretty close.
You guys gonna get weird. Dun, 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 dun. Things get weird at the Cosmic Summit. All right. Well, that's it. We get out of here.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think that's it. Well, support the show, guys. And do you have a bio?
Oh no, I don't. No, I don't. I don't think there is one available for him, but I do have his handles, which I might as well say again. Now that I have to open my notes back up here, what's going on? So at X, it's 1_analog_9, and YouTube is at 1_analog_9. The Archivist.
The Archivist. There you have it, guys. Enjoy the chat with the Archivist.
right. Ben, the Archivist, welcome to Grimerica. How you doing?
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, no problem. We're super excited about this. I mean, so many things like A friend of ours, big shout out to Paul from Jasper. He was like, you got to have Archivist on and, listen to the last THC. So, of course, I listened to you and Greg, and it's fantastic. I mean, it really does overlap with so much of the stuff that we're interested in. So it's great to finally meet you and get to chat about your work.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I listened to you guys in the THC days. I don't really do too much listening anymore, more kind of just my own thing. But yeah, so it's
cool.
It's been a long time coming. So I'm
right
excited.
on. Yeah, when was the first time you because you kind of almost came out in a way, right, on THC?
Yeah, I did a video. Man, I did an interview, like a video interview. First time I ever did a video interview on a channel called Exertus. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No.
Talking about baby farms and the 1800s orphan trains, asylums, and the creation of the working class in America. Me and Exertus were friends for a long time. I did a radio show over 5 years ago now with a Danish friend of mine. I was kind of a intermittent co-host called Radio Tartary. So yeah, I've been all around, but video format stuff changed. And Greg at THC, I've been on there, I think 3 times now. 3 times. And yeah, he's been a big catalyst to me trying to pursue doing something like this. I wouldn't say professionally, but taking my interest to a more broad spectrum, I suppose, or a broad audience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So now you have a YouTube channel and you're sort of putting sort of regular videos out on your work. And
yeah, semi-regular, father of 3 young kids and working full time. It's an ebb and flow. So do the best I can.
How would we describe your work at a high level then? Like just, we can get into the details as we go along, but I'm really interested in like what this is kind of, what you think now about all this stuff that you've sort of been analyzing all these details for so long. Kind of interested in a lot of big picture stuff, but
yeah, I started sharing things that interest me as far as I've been an avid reader for 20 years, obsessive level, and kind of a revisionist history, questioning everything from food to medicine to history, whatever, the whole spectrum, as you gentlemen know. Once you get your toe in the water, eventually it'll spread into a bunch of different subjects. I would say my bread and butter is kind of like the Anomalous America material, which is a series I started where I just correlate really interesting articles from the late 1700s through the early 1950s, 1940s. And I put them into a state-by-state presentation. And I just wrapped up, I think, episode 20 in Iowa. And I would say that's kind of what I'm most known for and my most enjoyable outlet for this work. But as far as big picture, I mean, we could go anywhere.
Yeah. So, but this is all digital archives that you've scrape, or how do you like access all the documents?
It's at this point it's 95% digital. Early on, it was a lot of analog books I loved. I purchased and was literally taking pictures with my phone and sharing them on Twitter. I've been on Twitter for like 15 years. And then, with more and more stuff being added to the digital archives every year, it's become quite easy to triple your efforts, so to say, and cover more ground thanks to these digital archives. But yeah.
Has AI helped at all with that?
Who?
AI?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I know AI is kind of used in some digitization. Some governments use it, but as far as I know, most of America has been hand scanned over 20 plus years and added to the federal Library of Congress, which is my big one. But I've used just about every university. Every big university has a digital archive in every state. And most of the time they're free. Sometimes you have to pay. and then every state has a digital archive, because the Library of Congress is missing, I'd say 15 to 20% of every state's newspapers. So if you really want to get, fine tooth comb, you have to go to each state. And then from there, you could go to the universities if it's a pay to view subscription based thing and you don't want to pay.
So are you manually picking these things out, or can you start like
yeah, I've never used AI. These are, I would say, almost 100% of everything on my channel is old work. I saved thousands and thousands and thousands of newspapers over 10 years. And then talking with Greg from the higher sides, we eventually pieced together our first show, and that kind of led me into the idea of Anomalous America. And that laid the groundwork for how I would go back through my work and reorganize everything to create a presentation that would be a little more digestible.
And even still, you're still having to manually read everything. Like you can't like throw it all in PDF and search it and stuff like that. Or can you?
Library of Congress and a lot of the universities now, it's PDF form.
Okay.
So I'm sure there are people out there that could use AI and really search, everything for a specific thing. But the searches on Library of Congress are pretty good.
Yeah.
I've found some holes and some things have changed, and it's become harder to find certain newspapers. Like when I go back and I'm looking for, okay, here's a particular newspaper I saved from, 2018, and now I can't find it. That's happened quite a few times, actually. So I think they kind of, whoever they is, I think they probably use some catchphrases with AI to limit what you see, because I've definitely noticed that change. But I have done all of my searches, and all of my material has been me looking for a specific thing manually. And going back through and doing this YouTube channel has been great, because I never saved any of my information thinking I would present it. So it was just a whole 2 terabyte hard drive of completely unorganized mess. And Twitter had helped, because I had posted a lot of the things I had found on Twitter. That's where it kind of started. And that's where Greg and I kind of developed the format that I use in my videos, so to say. But yeah, it's easier for everybody now. I think it was kind of a niche thing. But now I definitely see more and more people reading newspapers and sharing work like mine.
Yeah, totally. What about is there lots there? Like is there, have you exhausted the search at all, or is there still lots to go to?
I mean, I could just do YouTube for probably 2 or 3 years on just my archive. So let alone what other, because all the time, if I'm rereading something or I see something in a book that stands out, like I just started a new series called Buried Empires, Ireland as America the Great, or Ireland the Great was the name of America. And I kind of traced the Irish roots of Rome and Italy and Mesoamerica. And so just going back through that, I've had to research things, and I find more and more material. So really, you could go fine tooth comb down these rabbit holes and come up with hours and hours and hours of material, reading material. So yeah, it's quite a deep archive. Library of Congress grows every day.
Wow. So
is that where I wonder, I should learn how to do this, because we're always kind of looking to check the copyright status on different things. And I feel like the Library of Congress is sort of one of the places I seem to end up doing that sort of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the Freedom of Information Act covered a lot of public documents that newspapers kind of fell on. Not that they were keeping things from the public, so to say, but the laws that unfolded from that led to them digitizing anything that they felt fell within that particular jurisdiction, as far as obviously nothing specific for government. But yeah, when that act went through, that's when they just completely started uploading pretty much willy-nilly. As far as copyright stuff, and I've had a search. I have a hard time searching Canada's archives. countries are getting far more limiting on VPNs and outside network use and stuff like that. I don't know how it is for people looking at America's archives. I don't know if you guys have used Library of Congress, but I have heard people say they have problems using it from other countries. I've certainly had problems searching other countries. So,
Huh.
It hasn't been bad, I guess. I can get in there. They let me use it. It's just like, it seems hard to search. It's like I'll type in maybe even the full title of a book and the author, and it's coming back with just so much stuff, and I don't really know how to get through it.
Yeah, having used it so much now, I can tell you right now, like, you don't want to use more than 3 words. 2 at the most. 3 is okay, but you find that as you limit the amount of, if you put in a full sentence, you're going to get a lot more stuff. And you have to limit the amount of words they're separated by. And there's all these kind of little tricks to help the AI search things. And if you're not finding what you want, you have to adjust it. And they're coming out with a new version, which is in beta, which when I type the same phrases in between each engine, they come up with completely different things. So it certainly seems like they're making some changes. Whether or not that's totally for the benefit of easing the search for the average person like yourself looking for whatever it is they're looking for, I don't know, but they're definitely changing the parameters for searches and supposedly to make it a little more easy for people to narrow down what it is exactly they're looking for. But yeah, you can't copy paste titles or book names. Like a person's name is where you're going to have to start, and then you're just going to have to do the work and look through and find. If you're looking for a specific time frame, you can narrow it down by time and date and month and year, by city. So if you're looking for a specific author in a specific time frame and you know the region where they were publishing, that helps narrow everything down. But yeah, it can be a little bit tedious for sure. I mean, some of these crazy articles that I've shared over the years, some of them just pop out, and others I really had to go hunting for.
When you're looking, is there a specific thing you're looking for? Do you kind of have some set keywords you go through, or does it depend on the project?
Totally depends. Something will pop into my mind, and I'll just go dig into it. Sometimes I'll do Gallica, which is kind of a French-based archive system. Sometimes I'll do Library of Congress. Sometimes I'll do Google search. Google adds a million things to their AI for searching actual hard copies of books, which helps a lot. So it's kind of a plethora of things. But yeah, it's usually a specific phrase.
Go ahead. Do you follow that because it pops into your head? Like, is that a real thing that you're like something, some inspiration, something's popped in my head, I got to look, like it's a sign to go look for it?
Absolutely. Yeah, like if I'm traveling somewhere and I see something that stands out, like Crater Lake, lake in my home state. It's one of the deepest lakes in the world. I'm driving past it, and I spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes reading just about every article I can from when that area became a national park and interesting things that they found and the naming of it and stuff like that. What the Native Americans, how they described, because that's always really interesting to me. I try to mix the Native Aboriginal view of a lot of the things I post and work it into my videos.
How did it start?
My searching or the YouTube?
Well, I guess one would sort of lead to the other. I mean, let's start with the searching. Like, what got you into this? Was there a certain thing you wanted to figure out right away? Was there some sort of a trigger?
Yeah, there was. I've told this story a few times, but in 2007, I had a motorcycle accident, and I had an out-of-body experience during the accident, and I was nearly paralyzed and had a long recovery, and shared my experience with a few people, few friends, family members, and it was all quickly dismissed as, people experience these types of things when they're in traumatic events, which is true, but it didn't quite quench my thirst as far as explaining what I had experienced. So I started diving into near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, and that led me down a huge rabbit hole of consciousness. What is consciousness? simulation theory, blah, 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 all these things. And then that from there, it connected me with all these ancient religious views of what the death experience is and dream states and on and on and on. And that reminded me of a situation when I was younger. I found a bomb on my campus of my middle school. During the summer, I was doing a cleanup project and I found a pipe bomb. And the bomb squad came and blew the bomb up and the whole neighborhood gathered around. It was, pretty crazy. You don't really see anything like that. So they did the newspaper wrote a little thing about me and my mom clipped it out and it was on our fridge for, 10 years. And then the clipping was lost. And I was telling this story to somebody in my early 20s and had to go look at my local library to try to find the article. I ended up finding it. It was kind of this archaic, where you actually had to find the physical copy of the newspaper. I knew the date. My mother remembered the date. So that helped narrow it down. So through that whole process, I was familiar with the fact that we keep it organized and, store every newspaper from the creation of a state. So every state has been doing this. The librarian was telling me about it and how much work it actually is to organize all these newspapers, going back 200, 300 years in some cases, or 250 years.
It's got to be weirder now, right? Because now it's just like, what do they do with all the bullshit pop culture stuff? Like, it just all goes in? It's like, yeah, The Rock, got in a beef with this guy this week,
Oh, I know, right?
Like, it's got to be just turning into a real mess in there. Because I do feel like, regardless of its flaws, that like 50 or 60 years ago, the newspapers were mostly restricted to news.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there was the occasional gossip thing, but it was more based from a perspective of like, John D. Rockefeller's in town and the town's pissed because he's closing down this railway station and moving all of his freight line to ships or something like that, right? That was as good as gossip got. So yeah, it's news. Obviously, this is pretty obvious to most people, but yeah, news is not what it used to be. And that's what I fell in love with, was reading newspapers from the 1800s, because it was very straightforward and cut and dry. And you're dealing with all these little versions of a bigger version of newspapers. The most common thing I get is yellow journalism, and they were making things up in the 1800s. Well, sure, but again, no one's read as many newspapers as me. I really think that, especially in this time frame. And I've have thousands of, you name it, buried relics, tombs, buildings, cities, mummies, on and on and on, giants. I mean, it's to a point now for me where it's highly unlikely. I wouldn't say anything for sure. And you could say that about a lot of things. You invest enough time into something, that
Can you see a clear break anywhere? Like, could you give me a decade? Could you break it down to a decade where it went to shit?
Yeah, let's not go there too fast. I want to get there for sure, but let's finish off your story first, because you were just talking about like the significance of, like, I forgot how spiritual that was. Like, I knew about your OBE and your NDE, but that actually has a direct link to you looking up the archives.
Yeah, absolutely. That was where I really started. Like, that was probably the point where because I've always loved history and I always had a mind where I never believed anything at surface, at the kind of the face value. And I always looked into things for myself. So I was a bit suspicious even as a youngster. But after this accident, I literally didn't work for 7 months. I was stuck in a chair and in a bed for a big majority of that. And yeah, I was just buying books 2 or 3 or 4 a day and reading 20 hours a day. And there was no digital anything. I wasn't using digital archives at all at the time. And so the obsession really blossomed in that time off. And then shortly after that, my appendix ruptured and I had sepsis and got very sick. And again, had another almost 8 months of time to read. So it was, in a year and a half, I spent over a year, I would say, reading pretty much nonstop. And from that, you can, the books that came from that whole thing are, I changed my opinion on the history of America, the founding of the colonies, the gold rush, finance, on and on and on.
Yeah, almost everything.
Yeah. Everything changed in that 18-month window or so. And yeah, it's been quite an amazing journey to this point, and talking to you guys, and kind of pinch myself candidly. It's been a journey for sure.
So then, I mean, we'll jump in where Darren was sort of leading us, because we talk about this quite a bit on the show, because we've read all these books on audio. We've narrated all these books from the 1800s. And I've had this thing lately, like, oh my, it was a completely different thing in the 1800s. I mean, it was completely different. I've been saying this, that think something really changed in the early 1900s. It kind of maybe led up to it, but there was something big that happened, and the whole narrative, everything shifted. And I just got this from reading like Blavatsky and the history of magic and the history of spiritualism and some sort of like light occult stuff and also some sciencey stuff too. But
I love the occult and theosophy. I mean, and I'm blessed with the job that I have right now, where I can listen to audio my entire shift. So I've worked there for almost 20 years. So every single day, obviously there's breaks here and there. I don't really listen to much music. I really just listen to books. Yeah. And so, it's been fantastic. The sweet spot for me is, the gold rush. So 1850 onward, 1840s onward. Yeah. There's a big gap, as Darren kind of was asking before you jumped in there. There's a big gap for me in like historical anything in the early 40s to like the early 1800s. There's a huge gap where there's almost nothing comes up on my searches. I have very little saved, because I save most of it by dates, my PDFs. Just coincidentally, that's how my tablet was organizing things, was by their date. I mean, it's crazy. It seems like America's reborn, so to say, although obviously what we knew of as the western part of America, west of the Mississippi, was almost nil until the 1840s and onward. So that's a big chunk of obviously my presentation, because most of my states are obviously west of the Mississippi. But America in the 1700s in the northeastern part of America versus America in the 1840s and onward is like a completely different country. The way they speak, the things they talk about. I've read a huge amount of newspapers from the late 1700s, Philadelphia, Boston area. And they're not looking for anything. They're not interested in digging. They're not like, look at this amazing discovery. Look at this mound we opened. That like doesn't exist. So it's like almost like a completely different culture. The way people were thinking and writing was completely different versus 1840s and onward, where we're stepping into kind of new territory. Although, there's plenty of proof to show they knew exactly what was west of the Mississippi. But as far as new settlements popping up and then people having these little newspapers where you're literally you got 2 or 3 writers who have full-time jobs and write on the side. They're not full-time, news correspondents. So a farmer comes into town, because that's where everything's word of mouth, right, in this time frame. So for me, I find it refreshing and far more honest. But you get a farmer comes into town and tells a story like, I was tilling, I bought another 3 acres off John, and I was tilling the field, and I ran into this stump or this tip of this mound, and look what I found. It's like there's a million articles like that where these people just stumble on these artifacts or buried cities. It gets pretty crazy on my channel. Cave systems that are endless, where they never reach the end of the cave, stuff like that. But as far as time frames and like where I see kind of the blip or the schism, it's definitely the early 1800s.
When does it start turning into propaganda?
Right before World War I.
Wow. So there's really only like 70 golden years.
Yes, absolutely. I've said this several times, that everything that I love, my bread and butter, as far as honest research, or at least, where you don't have a bunch of government oversight. It takes a Smithsonian representative several weeks to get to these places and either buy the artifacts or convince them not to talk about it. So you have several cases where there are multiple articles written where more information comes out about them. And the Smithsonian is always the end all be all. As soon as they announce the Smithsonian's been notified or that they're coming or that a representative is there, it's gone from the newspapers. And the amount of money they were spending on relics and buying farmers out was absurd in this time period. I mean, Smithsonian himself was found himself into a huge inheritance and had a large sum of money, but he definitely had private backing because we're talking millions of dollars in the early 1900s he was spending. I did a video where the Smithsonian had a $5 million bounty on a dinosaur in the Congo in the early 1900s.
Was that Mukele and Mbembe?
That I'm sure it wasn't called that then, but yeah, in I think 1910, the Smithsonian was literally put a $5 million bounty on a dinosaur. This is their words, the dinosaur of the Congo. And it attracted all the big game hunters from around the world. So the big game hunting is, you look at our early presidents, senators, dukes, royalty, a lot of these guys into big game hunting. I mean, you had to have a lot of money because we're talking months trek to get to some of these places. Roosevelt's a big one that stands out if anyone's dived into that before. But yeah, I have tons of videos on crazy monsters. I call them these creatures that survived this event, whatever it was, this kind of changeover. I don't want to go too far and say it was a cataclysm per se. But yeah, there are a lot of these creatures that are kind of fantasy Hollywood type animals that were not only known of, but were publicly written about, and that dukes and big game hunters from around the globe were traveling to hunt them.
Oh yeah, there's so many questions I have, but I mean, let's stick to the 1700s. So, do you have any theories of why there was a bit of a gap there in the 1700s? Was that strictly because they were fussing more politically with stuff? There was the French Revolution. There was a whole sort of pushback against the monarchies and the states, and
yeah, England for sure played a big part. But even I talk about language a lot, Middle English was still being used in the 1700s. And a lot of newspapers were still being written in Middle English. And for anybody who's spent enough time talking about languages, these transitional periods between Old English, Middle English, and what we call the third stage of English that we use today, they're slow, gradual changes. But Middle English to what we use today was quick. It was like a 20-year period, maybe even less. And whether or not England had more control over publishing, I've found plenty of evidence of that you kind of had to run what you're printing by the higher ups versus when you get out to a tiny town in Iowa, you're not ringing up somebody in Washington or Boston or whatever to get approval. But yeah, what happened? I would say the early 1800s, the New Madrid event, I think was much bigger of an event than we're even told of today. Although more and more information is coming out to show that it was pretty substantial. The few good newspapers I found on the New Madrid event, which if you're not familiar for your listeners, this crazy earthquake that happened in the early 1800s over several year period, actually hundreds of quakes, the biggest one in 1811 and the second one in 1812, the story of the Mississippi flowing backwards for several days. And but yeah, the Civil War and the New Madrid event, I think all of these things point to a massive event of some kind that changed the way America was shaped, written about, how we grew, how we wrote about the Western states, a lot of things.
And then it came around again, almost resurrected in mid 1800s, so around 1850, where there's that 70 years of because that's really what I noticed is the amount of all these books in the late 1880s was a big decade. The 1880s.
It's like a rebirth. It's like we're dealing with a civilization that's having to relearn everything. And why, for somebody like you who's spent some time in 1800s philosophy, which is a big niche of mine, you look at all these authors and it's like they're having to go everywhere else for this philosophical knowledge. Why is that? What happened? Right? Because the English weren't slouches. There was a lot of strong, so to say, philosophical work going on in the late 1700s in America, but none of the authors in the 1800s were interested in it. They were all going elsewhere, old world, right? You find that with everything. It's like, well, what happened here? It's like everyone's relearning everything. America, as we know it, didn't really have a leg to stand on, from my point of view, looking at the archives in the 1700s on anything. Mining industry, it was all really located. You had two opposing parties. The parties built around the Gulf of Mexico, right, the South, and then the Union. And the only bridge between them was the Mississippi. Obviously, there had been wars fought along the Mississippi for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe even longer than that. But yeah, the Civil War, the more I look into it and the more time I spend through the archives talking about it, and I have family members that supposedly fought in the Civil War. And my family still lives on the same piece of land for over 200 years in northern Georgia, and that's as good as God's word, the Civil War, but a lot of things don't really add up. And the newspaper archives support it. Like if you were to look at a graph of written record, 1790, and then as soon as 1800s start, there's almost nothing as far as consistently colonies being founded and things being written about, whatever it is, taxation, laying out land plots. And there's just nothing until about the 1840s.
So did we not? So there's a bit of a disconnect there for me then. So did they not know about all this then? Like you mentioned how they had to go out of the States for the ancient wisdom and all that, right? But you're showing all these examples of that actually being right here in America, like
exactly,
huge, tunnels and temples and all kinds of artifacts and the mounds and the underground sort of complexes and all that.
Mm-hmm. There were a few authors. They weren't really authors again in this time period. They weren't writing books, right? But they were like being interviewed by somebody. A lot of them, were reverends or anthropologists from some place far away who was coming to this place because he heard some crazy story, right? And then they're telling the story to a writer. They're not even writing an article. It's not like it would be today. And yeah, so that's kind of what I mean by building this picture of something happened and kind of wiped the slate of North America clean. And I mean that in a physical as well as a metaphorical idea that not only were we recolonizing, quote, colonizing America, right? Because we say it was a barren place, but even the Aztecs and a lot of these Native American tribes say and support a lot of what I've been saying, that, yeah, like specific ruins that I'm discussing, whether it's in Arizona, Arkansas, Louisiana, that they were in ruins when their family migrated there 4, 5, 6, 7 generations before. And that they a lot of them have similar stories that line up quite crazily with Bible story. That there was a biblical type war and that these two opposing parties had some battles that sound like, straight out of the Bible, and giants were warring. I mean, just about every Native American tribe, especially in the southern states into Mexico, giants isn't like a if or what, it was absolutely the case, and that a lot of them were still surviving and living in caves.
Wow. So were they just starting to find this stuff in the mid 1800s and late 1800s? Yeah. Like that was kind of when it started to, that was the sort of the rebirth you're talking about. And then obviously there was a decision made at some point to like, let's squash this down. So where did you see like a shift? I mean, you kind of answered that with the propaganda that Darren talked about, but where was the reset then from that, the golden years there, like after World War I, or?
I'd say before World War I. I have hypotheses about what kicked off World War I, and it's quite a bit different than what most people talk about. I described that the real war with the Germans was about airships and minerals, uranium, thorium, radium being the big ones, and that in the American Southwest is the largest storage of all of those three elements. That the Germans had mined all three of those elements to near existence in Bohemia, Austria, Poland, and they had been using those elements for all kinds of things. You know, you could go as deep as saying, you know, kind of these darker project UFO type projects to Zeppelins and stuff like that. And I've talked about that when you look at a lot of old pictures of American cities, not just American cities, worldwide pictures of cities from the 1800s, the sky is completely vanillaed out. Are you familiar with that? Where just about all the old pictures, you can see no clouds, nothing in the sky is defined. Have you heard the term vanilla sky?
But that makes me think of those old world Florida blocks. I don't know what he want. I think they were anchor stones. He wanted them to be for boats, but I mean airships. He might have said airships too. I can't really remember, but I remember thinking airships. Looks
Absolutely.
like you tie your fucking rope around that hole in that rock, and away you go.
Yeah, me and Dr. Longo are pretty good friends, and we've done a lot of shows together, and we've talked about connecting this idea of Atlantis and the idea that the Gulf of Mexico is the true Fertile Crescent, and these kind of biblical lands of the East were really stolen from the biblical lands that find their foundations here in Central and North America. But yeah, so the vanilla sky thing I was mentioning is that a lot of these pictures, the sky is blotted out because I believe that they were covered in ships. Airships and Zeppelins were covering the globe in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And this group called the German Syndicate, that's how they were written of in the papers. It was kind of a consortium of a lot of investors from Germany and Europe were buying up mines and land all over North and South America, looking for thorium and radium salts. And yeah, they own 90% of all that mineral in the late 1800s. And then Congress came in and basically said, if you're not an American interest, you can't buy this land. And they were basically booted out. And I think that's what led to a lot of the uneasy and, you know, the Titanic, a lot of these things, again, with a limited amount of time. I can't really build the narrative so much, but you find a lot of these millionaire, billionaire type tycoons correlated and related to this. The radium subject is really a powerful one, and it goes into radium springs and finding the elixir of life. And that, you know, when people talk about Ponce de Leon coming to Florida looking for that he found it in the water, the spring water of Florida, which has some of the highest radium quantity of any spring water in the world. And a lot of these, you know, the first kind of vacation idea that came along was people were taking trips to these sanitariums, is what they were called. And they basically were bathhouses. And they were built on these radium springs. And they were endlessly spoken of as being healing. People could come there with any illness, and they'd spend a weekend there, and they'd leave without the illness.
Like the old healing temples in Greece, really.
Yeah, so all the Roman bathhouses, the Turkish bathhouses, the Moorish bathhouses, they're all connected to springs. This is subject removed from my own study, but I go as far as to say that they're all radium springs, and that this radium impregnates the water, and when it's induced into the body, has remarkable healing effects. But yeah, so the anchor stones that we've talked about, me and Longo have done quite a few talks about the blimp history of Florida. The Germans, when they would come to North America, they would always dock in Florida. And a byproduct of the breakdown of radium is helium. So you basically had, you know, then they were building perpetual steam engines that ran infinitely off radium. So you have an airship that produces its own chemical to stay aloft, and also that process creates perpetual motion. They could literally stay up in the air for months at a time. I'm sure some of you guys have seen some of those pictures of what flying in a dirigible in that time period was like. It was crazy. I mean, they had whole buildings essentially in these blimps, and these people were in the air for a month at a time, and they were flying all over Europe, North America, and South America. And the Hindenburg. There's quite a few good books out there, but the Hindenburg was a designed failure to kind of wipe the map of dirigibles. But yeah, so that was a glossing over of many subjects there, but yeah.
And wasn't the Hindenburg made with a different gas too?
It was, yeah, and obviously people know about the paint. I think a lot of people, your listeners, will be aware that they painted the ship with a flammable paint, I think, in days leading up to the accident, which no Zeppelin had ever used. It was quite heavy and it would affect its ability to stay aloft and many other things. But yeah, the Germans, the Nazi party, once they were kicked out of America, they were caught stealing radium all over the world. They just started stealing it from France and Europe and Japan, and this is again written of in the newspapers.
Wow.
And this was all for airships, you think?
I think they were using radium for a lot of things. The first episode the first episode of my radium series, I show the first article I've ever found talking about radium, and it was a gentleman in Southern California who built an airship that defied gravity. It could go up and down. It was basically completely null and void. He could move it anywhere he wanted and lock it in place, phase lock it, so to say. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Walter Bosley and his NIMSA work.
NIMSA, yeah, we had him on a while back, yeah.
Awesome. So I think NIMSA is tied in because obviously a lot of them were Germans. Think they were well aware and they were decades ahead of the U.S. government when it came to this type of technology.
How did you say they make radium again?
Well, radium is found naturally.
Yeah, but they were also
part of radium
from it, or
part of radium's decay is it creates helium.
Helium.
So they were calling it the Philosopher's Stone, and the secret to alchemy is hidden within radium because it transmutes itself into helium, a byproduct of it. Radium's an incredible thing. I go as far as to say it's kind of the secret of Atlantis. You read enough work on Atlantis, they talk about everything was glowing, kind of like Avatar. Everything was phosphorescent. Well, radium impregnates its radiation on just about everything it comes in contact with and makes it glow. And they were doing tests with crystals with radium, and they found that all these different types of crystals stored the radium and that they would change colors. And they'd have almost like a laser effect, depending on the crystal that was used. So it's a deep rabbit hole, the radium one. But yeah, from healing springs, which again were bought out, most of them were bought out by the Rockefellers. Most of the sanitariums, which were these people from the north, came to the southern states, the warmer climates, and these sanitariums. They're all over Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, the southern states especially. And it's found in the ocean, and the Gulf of Mexico has more radium in its ocean water than anywhere on the globe. So,
wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I was thinking when I listened to you with Greg and Darren and I have been talking about the alternative history for a while now, and the younger Dryas as well. Like it makes. Oh no, where do I want to go? There's two different things here. So first of all, I was thinking, why did they have to, like, all the stuff you talk about has been hidden from history, right? Whether it's the giants or the sort of chemical technology or whatever, the underground stuff, the mounds, all this stuff has been hidden. Monsters, even, like,
yeah.
And I just thought, why would they bother? Like, why wouldn't they just use that narrative in order to keep us in fear? Like, I mean, obviously they, nowadays they want to keep us in fear. I mean, but couldn't they have done that if they kept those sort of narratives open? Like, why would they just shut it all down? I mean, and then canceling the ether. I don't know if you heard that recent podcast with Joe Rogan with Terrence Howard. He's talking about the ether a lot. Like, you would find that podcast fascinating, but he gets into
one of my coworkers mentioned that to me.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Walter Russell guy.
Yeah.
I've listened to every one of his books several times. And radium and the ether they go hand in hand. And what people were writing about the ether in the 1800s is, quite frankly, to me, exactly what's been taken away from science and this whole gravitational model. There are many things, obviously, we could go anywhere really with science. And the opinion that they had in the 1800s was drastically different from what we have today, and far more honest. They were just speaking of what they were finding, and even a scientist at a university was able to be a little more forthright with what they found and what they thought about it. And whereas now there's just so many levels of bureaucracy that you're not even getting like a quarter truth. You're getting like a tenth, maybe, if you're lucky.
So I guess that kind of answers my question is the ether's a pretty big one. The whole energy system and the ether. I mean, that could be why they sort of really squashed the whole spiritual reality and made it this materialistic thing. Like,
of course,
we're following Newton's laws and there is no ether anymore. There's just dark energy, dark matter and all this. And forget the ancient wisdom and technology. So like we'll reset all that after World War I, it seems to me, like 1904, 1905, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they knew that they wanted to create space. Everything is inverted, right? Because there's no space, even between me and you guys. There is no space. With the ether model, everything is connected.
Yeah.
And they needed to get away from that. And the idea of going beyond the firmament, remember, they had to do a lot of things to remove all of these ideas. I don't necessarily prescribe wholeheartedly to the Bible or King James, but there are a lot of really fantastic metaphorical truths in these ancient texts. And, even, just listen to Jesus himself. He tells you, cursed is the person with the literal mind. These books are all metaphysical and speak to a different part of your brain. And if you try to literalize everything, you're kind of gluing your feet to the ground, so to say. But yeah, the Walter Russell ether stuff, he really disputed all that. The idea of gravitation, even Einstein, a lot of these people that we, from a science standpoint, cling to today, their theories were really kind of completely thrown away or disproven in this time period. Obviously, Einstein doesn't fall into that category of the 1800s, but it was much more cut and dry. And yeah, radium in the ether was a thing that they were discussing, and that radium primes the ether, and that radium emanates through anything. It floats through stone. It goes through anything. I mean, they have to build those huge lead boxes to keep the radium from leaking out. And even still, very minute particles make their way out. Well, in the 1800s, early 1900s, the radium was so thick in the air in Colorado that it was measurable. And I've hypothesized that this is what led Tesla to Colorado Springs, and that he was studying radium in the ether. And that was kind of the next progression in his work.
Wow, that's fascinating. Darren, do you have anything on that at all? Or
what? Well, we have Radium Hot Springs here. Maybe we should spend some more time over there, because I was reading the thing and it said it's because they found radon in the water.
I think it was 1933. It might have been when they built that. So it was after the area that he's talking about. But I was surprised at how much work they put in to this Radium Hot Springs. And we were just there for one of our events last November, and we're going to be there again. And it was like quite the infrastructure that they built around this hot springs in the early 1900s. So
yeah, which one is that? Because there's a lot
that's
of
actually called Radium Hot Springs
in Colorado, or where?
No, in BC.
Oh, in BC. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, these, when we talk again about Aboriginal, Native, whatever term you want to use, cultures, they worship these waters. They all knew about the hot springs. I mean, the Finnish sauna, you can find, like I've talked about with religion, gods, language, all of those can be traced back to a very central root, and so can the sauna and the bathhouse. So it's crazy. Every culture that was, hunting and fishing knew about a sauna, whether they knew about this culture a million miles away. It's a big one. So again, this idea of losing touch with, like you said, ether in the ground and everything, nature, especially the interconnectedness of everything. They needed to remove all of that. I mean, obviously, they wanted to build a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And we're living through the repercussions of that.
Yeah. So as far as the timeline stuff goes, like when we do trips with Randall and we've sort of been learning about the Younger Dryas, and there's that mainstream explanation of like the top of North America was covered in glaciation, right? And then it makes it, and then I start thinking, okay, like it does make sense that's let's just call it South America sorry, the Southern United States, let's say, because I don't even know if Southern Canada fits in anywhere under where the glaciers probably covered all of today's Canada, but let's just say the Southern United States. If we believe the mainstream narrative of the glaciation, like why wouldn't that all be the same as Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, like all that would just go up into the States as far as like antiquities go and that real sort of ancient stuff. It doesn't really surprise me now, because I think that glaciation, if it's real, just blocked it for many thousands of years, just blocked civilization. But I wonder if maybe it wasn't so long ago, like
very close.
Yeah.
I know you both you gentlemen are busy, but for any listeners out there, I strongly recommend watching episode 1 of Anomalous America. It's Alaska. I started with Alaska for a reason, because it builds the foundation for the rest of the series. And I think that the glacial period was super close, and it didn't last very long. And there's no better case for that than the things they were finding in Alaska. Frozen cities, Greek cities and mountains, frozen dinosaurs, giant lizards and frozen blocks of ice, living lizards that live underground that these big game hunters were coming to Alaska to hunt. They found petrified boats that were over 1,200 feet long, on and on and on. Giants in caves. The Aleutian chain, the whole Aleutian Island is a buried city. Every island they found buried buildings on every single island.
Wow. Where's the Aleutian Islands?
It's the chain that goes off the coast of Alaska.
Okay. Yeah. False Pass and all that. Okay. There's a huge. I mean, when you look at the map, there's a huge cliff there. Let me just put it on the screen here quickly. That's like the, if you look at like before the sea level rose 400. I mean, look at that huge shelf there. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe that was all land, right?
100% there was land there. I mean, you look at Yonaguni off Japan, anywhere from 0 feet to 100 feet, even more in some places.
Yeah.
There's ruins off the coast of almost all islands.
Yeah.
The realm we inhabit was populated by billions and billions and billions of people at one point. There wasn't an area that wasn't covered. And the reason I mentioned Alaska and what you were saying is because I hypothesized that this tropical, the entire realm was one weather pattern. We didn't have seasons. It was all tropical. Alaska they found palm trees. They found ferns. They found 1,000-foot tall trees. Obviously, they weren't standing up anymore. But proof that Alaska was tropical and very recent was being uncovered every day in Alaska in the 1800s.
But how do you go to no season? I mean, that must be one for the skeptics that they're like, oh, he says there's no seasons. I mean, how would that be physically possible with in the system that we're in? I mean, wouldn't maybe pole shifts and pole flips explain that a little bit more, like where it actually shifts, where now we're at the North Pole, so the seasons are different here?
Or a lot of water vapor would do the same thing. I mean, if you just if you like increase the water vapor by, a couple hundred or 1,000%, then there wouldn't be any change in the weather. It'd be like where I live home, you're talking about relatively low water vapor in the air, even where I'm from in Ontario, but the temperature doesn't change when the sun goes down at night. So it's just sort of an extrapolation of that effect, I would think.
Absolutely. That's it right there. You hit the nail on the head. Water vapor. Every culture.
Now, before you go into that, are we going like the water vapor with the barrier, the actual like water atmosphere that RKX and some of these guys talk about? There was no sun before that shit popped.
Yep. I mean, again, I don't want to paint with a broad brush over their work. I'm familiar with RKX because people have blasted me on my presentations. I've been talking about the vapor canopy for a long time. You're going to cross paths with people that talk about similar subjects. But yeah, the vapor canopy, the fall of the vapor canopy was the flood event, that the biblical flood event that we're all familiar with. And everything was, kind of like a tropical climate. And so like you said, well, couldn't have South America and us flipped? Well, many of these authors that were first postulating the quote annular system or the vapor canopy system, which people were writing about in the 1800s, they said that the vegetation is found almost identically from Argentina to Alaska. So I would say that the whole realm was covered in this vaporous canopy. And many ancient cultures, again, discuss a time where there weren't stars and that the sun and the moon were born, not overnight, but kind of is the verbiage they use when describing it. And I think this correlates with the quote ice age, and that we're bringing all of these millions of years into a very narrow time frame. That's my belief.
Similar to Archaix's time frame of, I think he says 2259 BC. He has a bunch of different documents that all point to like the vapor canopy collapse at that point. I
haven't seen enough of his material to say I agree or disagree.
Well, is your thought that this is the early 1800s thing?
No.
That'd be too recent to clean up the mess, I think, right?
Yeah, because there's enough of a historical record just from my family that goes back to the early 1800s, late 1700s. I have family historical records in Massachusetts in the 1700s that I believe is true. I've seen it myself. So like saying that there's 150 year, again, I don't know exactly what his dates are, that there's like 150 years between big events. I can't go along with that. But the vapor canopy, again, when you look at Alaska, they were finding literally frozen cities in Alaska. There was a half of a mountain washed away, and they found a whole Grecian temple city in a mountain in Alaska. On and on. That's my favorite episode. I definitely recommend watching the Alaska episode. Just the stuff they find there, frozen in ice, will make you think, okay, well, how could all of this existed and then been frozen over? What did we miss? How is there a tropical epoch that correlates with this time frame of these ruins and these cities being built, frozen over? And then you have the quote Inuit and some of these other tribes that migrate, as they say, across the tundra and into North America or Canada or whatever. Their history.
Well, it lines up with some other weird anomalies too, like the banana anomaly, right? Like bananas. I can't remember the whole thing of these, but the Snake Bros took me through it. And they're like, dude, bananas shouldn't exist. And they're everywhere and you can live off them. They're one of the few foods that you could just eat bananas every day and you would.
It's like avocados.
You would live. Yeah. And they're like, these things can't be cultivating themselves in these different places around the planet without the help of humans. Period.
No, yeah, there's a lot like that. They called, the avocado was called the alligator pear, and they said it was the fruit from Atlantis that survived.
Oh, interesting. But I mean, the only other explanation could be it goes way farther back. So all those things were buried before the ice age. Like, so it goes back 100,000 or 150,000,
Yeah, I think Randall Carlson and I would have a hard time, because just from my little tiny YouTube channel and what I've presented, it shows that the timelines are wrong. How wrong? Again, how far these epochs are separated, how long the ice, I don't know any of that stuff. I'm just saying, here's an entire civilization buried in ice in Alaska, and they were living off tropical vegetation and building things with tropical. There's coconuts found in Alaska, under this layer on top
and
of the animals.
This is all based on newspaper articles.
Correct. For the most part, yes. 90%, yeah.
Well, I mean, we started a whole calendar 2024 years ago for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Do those dates resonate with you at all? I mean, it can't be because, I'm not going to get into the Jesus thing here. I'm not even ruling. I'm not, I like the Christians. I like all of it. It seems great, except for the Dublin. But I've had a hard time believing that we started a whole new calendar because of Jesus Christ. I just can't fucking fathom that.
No, I like to say that BC is before the cataclysm. and that they used some kind of event where inheritors or people started rewriting things. It's common knowledge that the Catholic Church was rewriting the history of the Peruvians, the Central Americans, on and on, the Irish. I mean, the Catholic Church has rewritten the history of countless ancient peoples. So not only is the history wrong, but the timelines are obviously been manipulated. I mean, I've read Flamenco back to front several times and discussed him for the better part of 10 years. And there's enough that even if you take 1% of Flamenco's work, that you can see that the timelines have been manipulated, at least the historical representations of them, and that the calendars changing would be necessary to kickstart and kind of base their historical representations, because they would be fallacy if a lot of these historical Roman events, Caesars and Augustus, and these are all mythological people, just like, obviously what Jesus represents is a mythological representation or a metaphor. So did these. So to attribute physical dates to the reign of Caesar and Augustus, even though they're just solar gods, would be silly. But that's what they've been doing with the Bible as well, is creating, here's Palestine, here's Israel, here's where it all happened. Now let's make some dates from it. Even though you can one gloss through from Flamenco, let alone, again, all the other works and hours and material that I've read that continually show that the timelines are wrong and the calendars changing. The calendars have changed more than once. But yeah, the calendar used to be what they called an annular system, and it wasn't marked by the sun and the moon. So there was no lunar calendar, there was no solar calendar. And the worship of the one true God, the Most High, the solar deity we know of, is historically relatively new. And I think it lines up with the vapor canopy stuff. And I can't say 2000 BC. I don't mess with numbers. I just say that most of those dates, why even bother? Because you can't truly say when this exactly happened. Because the Alaska material shows you, well, the numbers are wrong no matter what. Now, I wouldn't even try to attribute a date, because I'm already saying I can't trust any of this, that the calendars we'd be given, how long the ice age lasted, when it started, what dinosaurs, blah, 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 right? Because when you look at it from a geological standpoint, they'll show you, here's this layer, here's this layer, here's this layer. This layer was 30,000 years. This layer was 150 to 250,000 years. And this layer was 1 million plus. That's all nonsense, because each one of my episodes show you that in many cases, they find 1, 2, or 3 levels of civilization under cities. Mexico City is a perfect example. Uxmal, California, Arizona, Phoenix. Every city in my Arizona episode, every single major city in Arizona is built on another city, and publicly disclosed in the newspapers. Hey, we're citing the foundation of blah, blah, blah state building in Arizona and Phoenix, and we found this building that we don't know anything about. And this is every city.
Well, it's like Egypt too, right? I mean, I have trouble taking the Egypt thing back 20,000 years, because and even some of that stuff even resonates with the Younger Dryas stuff, because when I was just in the Scablands last week, like 3 or 4 days ago, I'm at Dry Falls. There's shit growing in the bottom of Dry Falls now. Now, it's hard for me to believe that it took 10,000 years for that to happen. It would resonate a lot more to say that was only, 2,000 years ago. It took a few thousand years for nature to start taking the world back in some drier spots.
No, that's ridiculous. But yeah, you should watch the Washington episode, because in that I go into Grand Coulee Dam. I talk about the stuff they were finding in the caves of that waterfall. There's just a little bit of material there that makes you question it. And again, the time frames. Not to mention, there are many maps that show all of Washington was a giant lake. And that Native American cultures, this is in my Washington video, I talk about this, that there was a giant serpent that lived in the lake and ate a bunch of Indians, and that they feared this serpent, and that they went to war with this giant serpent, like Loch Ness, that lived in a giant lake that covered the Scablands.
So is that why they were in such a... Because I mean, they seem to have killed a lot of Indians. Is this part of the reason? Were the Indians like not going along with the thing, or You know, I mean,
Yeah.
not only just killed them, they like really made a concerted effort to destroy their history and their culture and their language and their oral traditions. Like, really, that seems to be ultimately was a probably a higher priority than killing them, because they could have just killed them. It's almost like they wanted us still around, but spreading their same misinformation.
It goes back to what Graham was saying earlier about the ether and the unity of all things. Despite these cultures, you know, being at odds with each other sometimes and territorial disputes and whatever, most of them held the same, quote, religious background or understanding, that we lived on a living thing, that we were tied to it. It was tied to us. It was this completely circular, beautiful system that there was no confusion. And that, you know, the industrious white man with its slave population essentially has come in, and we want all this as a big land resource grab, is what most of it was a resource grab. Minerals, water, many things, you know, subterranean. You know, I talk a lot about that all the military bases are connected with these ancient subterranean systems that all these cultures were well aware of, and that many of them knew that every once in a while things on the surface get pretty shaky and that you have to go underground, you know, whether it's floods or, you know, volcanic events or what have you. But yeah, so they not only wanted to steal these people's lands, but wiping out that historical word of mouth history that they shared, because none of them really had a written language. They did, but it was learned from, you know, quote, Westerners or Europeans, Phoenicians. I do quite a few different series about discussing that topic, but all of their myth was passed verbally through story and song, and they were all very similar to what, you know, to one another, and that creating this false, not only timeline, right? Because many of these cultures are telling you what my channel is saying and showing what these people are finding, that America was densely populated, millions and millions of people, that there were different tribes that were warring with each other, red-headed giants, all kinds of crazy shit, dragons flying in the air, lizards running around. People were taming these giant, terrible lizard dragons, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, cultures come and go. And, you know, the Aztecs said that we were the fourth generation and that 3 previous had been destroyed by fire, flood, and mud. So the mud flood was the most recent. There was a event of fire that destroyed another group of people, and then there was a flood.
Where do you put the mud flood at?
The mud flood, again, I can't say a specific time frame, but I would say it's the most recent. In just my last Iowa episode, I talk about the mud flood, which is, I don't talk about it too much just because it's hard to correlate time frames. But when it comes to talking about buildings that are buried in mud, no better representation of that is there than in America, because there are ruins all over, especially the American Southwest, but everywhere. I mean, my home city of Portland, when I was in middle school, we were touring the underground. You know, there's 4 stories of city underground here in Portland. It's closed off now. You can't go down there. I'm sure it's just full of drug addicts and what have you. But I've extrapolated on that and said that's every major city across the realm. And
I've heard actually firsthand accounts from people that say they've been 5, 6, and 7, you know, layers beneath New York, that there's full cities under New York.
Yeah. I haven't got there yet, but I've posted a lot of stuff on New York over the years. They're clearing out the subway. They don't even say that they're building the subway. There are tunnels that they're finding in the 1800s that are already built, and they don't know who built them. And inside some of these, they're finding crazy things, like crazy things, boats that are buried, all kinds of crazy stuff. Same with Paris and London. In Paris, I believe they're building a new subway in the late 1800s. And they're running into all these old tunnels that they had no idea were there. You think if you have a city so far along as Paris, right, and they don't even have maps of the tunnels that are below them. And this is everywhere. Constantinople, same thing. They're improving a water system, and they're running into ancient water systems. They go inside of them, and they find a whole city. There's like 3 cities under Constantinople. They estimated they were 300 feet below Constantinople, and they were in a whole another buried city. Jerusalem, same thing. The European royalty hired this guy to go to Jerusalem and explore the underground because they knew there was an extensive sewer system. He said he dug down 300, almost 400 feet, and he found at least 2 different cities, 2 different civilizations. This is, again, 1800s newspapers. This is everywhere.
What about Canada?
Canada,
I have a feeling that like we were covered under ice or something. I mean, I just don't feel like we have that history here. But
yeah, I have so little on Canada, and again, I think that just has to do with the freedom of publishing in America in the 1800s was unlike anywhere else, and it was really like the Wild West. They were literally just like, okay, we kick these Indians off the land. We're going to we're going to do a draw system. We're going to hand this land over to all these random people that are coming from the east. They're going to be on this land, and look what they found. It's only a matter of time until you put a stranger on a new piece of land. They explore the land, or they're plowing, or whatever it is that they're doing, planting crops. Boom! Oh, I found a cave system. Look at this. I go in it. I can't tell you how many of those I have. Dozens and dozens now of caves they find. They go inside. It's a temple or a sarcophagus, or it's crazy.
Well, I mean, it makes you wonder, because there was this whole genre of early science fiction, subterranean fiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got this website pulled up, nighttime editions. I mean, and the amount of books, like there was and this is all, I think, from the late 1800s, early 1900s, The Secret of the Earth, Edidorpa, that's like a famous one there. We've got that on audio.
Yeah.
Phosphor, Thyra, the Wolfman. Actually, the one you mentioned is in here. The Moon Pool. What's next? The Goddess of Advabator, or the history of the discovery of the interior world, the land of the central sun, the divine seal.
Yeah.
There's one here where I won't read them all here, but the one that you mentioned, some of the Smoky God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I don't know. It seems crazy.
Yeah, and authors were postulating in the 1800s that the lost tribes weren't lost; they just went underground, and they found a tribe of tall, quote, Israelites in South America that were living in a cave system, who were practicing Masonic rites, and had a huge underground city with tons of really ornate mahogany woodworking skill and all kinds of stuff. And this is everywhere. And again, when it comes to presenting of 1 or 2 videos, it's like comments are always going to be, like people are drumming up a story, and, but again, having covered so much ground with that, like how many people in your small town are reading about a cave system, that connects with mummies and ancient tombs, and then they find the same thing in Arizona, but these people, geographically, it just doesn't make sense to me. And like my Kentucky episode, the Mammoth Cave system, 3,000 mummies were found in the Mammoth Cave. 3,000. There's a cave in Durango, Mexico, just across the border. Thousands of mummies found there too. I mean, this is every state. Mummies in Oregon.
Well, there's a ton of rumors about Egyptian shit being found in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, and just watch. And again, I know no one has the time to watch it all, but my Utah video, my Arizona video, my Colorado video, I talk about, so that's the main focus, subterranean, and I talk about all kinds of ancient Egyptian artifacts. And the Egyptian thing is found all the way to the Mississippi, all along the Mississippi, even into Florida and in Texas, and it's California. I think, again, tying to what Flamenco said with timelines, that our conception of historical narratives when it comes to the Bible and placing those events would more likely be here in the Americas than it would be Palestine and that neck of the woods. That's
a tough one. That's a hard one to.
Think of the Nile. Think of the Mississippi being the true Nile. That's a stretch, but when you've seen the material that I've covered, you at least go, "Oh, okay. Well, that's There definitely seems to be a representation in the discoveries made by locals in this time period to suggest that we may have been led down the wrong path as to who and what and where these events took place.
So, I mean, it seems like we've got room for more discoveries then in America. I mean, is it going to open up? Are the cracks kind of opening up now? The narrative shifting?
No,
I feel like more people are waking up to it. But I mean, if there's that much there, then there must be more that hasn't been discovered. That if we can get in there before the Neo Smithsonian shows up.
I mean, there's always opportunity. I mean, there's stuff that pops up all over on the, I don't really spend too much time digging through the news, but stuff gets sent to me regularly by viewers that makes you just kind of correlate with things I've already come across. In one of my episodes, I believe it was Missouri, I talk about when they're building the bridge that crosses from St. Louis into Illinois, they were sinking the pylons for the bridge, and they broke into a subterranean hallway, which led to a temple across the river in Illinois and back into St. Louis. And that's just one of dozens like that I've found.
Wow. That's fascinating.
So if you just watch like one episode, you'll walk away scratching your head going, oh, that's crazy. That's pretty cool. But then if you watch and watch and watch and watch, it's obviously not so much like it's set on repeat, but it's a lot of the same type of findings, but all over America.
Yeah, it just gives you the sense that it's not just somebody making up a story because it's so prevalent, right?
Super prevalent. Yeah, like we mentioned off air, we could talk about giants and show enough historical record to at least make you scratch your head. My goal is never to prove anything to anybody, but just inspire people to perhaps have a different outlook on the past, and maybe get inspired to do their own work. Because as you guys know, you can listen to the craziest thing to the most, relatable message, but until you actually start to look into things for yourself, you're never going to really feel right or wrong or make your decision up until you've kind of walked the path, so to say.
That's why they don't want us doing that anymore. I mean, don't do the research yourself. Just listen to the authorities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish your thought.
I was just going to say, so like, Randall, I've never met the guy. I love a lot of what he presents, but it's so easy to get caught up in timelines, I think. And I think that's a big trap. Just like we mentioned with the ether physics and the Walter Russell work, and especially the philosophy that you've done some of your audio work on from the 1800s. It just feels like you're tapping into, for me, I know this is not for everybody, but it just resonates with me. The first time I really dived into like Blavatsky's or, a lot of those theosophists in the late 1800s, especially, you just feel like you're born into a realm where everyone's having to kind of relearn everything, and they don't even have like an ancestral memory. It's like everything was wiped clean.
Yeah.
And that's going back to what Darren was asking earlier, why I think it was so important to get rid of a lot of the native culture or to banish it to very remote places in the realm, because their understanding of history and the realm is by far the closest to what I believe to be true.
Oh, that's interesting.
Is there anything you feel like we missed?
Well, the petrification I'd like to touch on. I mean, you do get into some of the petrification. We saw some petrified wood there in Arizona on one of our trips, and I found it pretty fascinating. Kind of like transmutes into like crystal and stuff. But I mean, you were getting into some deeper stuff, right? Like that.
Yeah. Every episode, I try to do at least one or two articles about petrifaction. A good friend of mine, Stellium 7. Are you guys familiar with him?
I don't think so.
He's done a amazing video series. He lives in Spain, right underneath a mountain called Mount Go. And he's done a video series exploring the possibility that it's a giant petrified elephant. And, on face value, it sounds ridiculous. So you watch the videos and it'll blow your mind. And throughout all my videos, I show quite incredible examples of petrifaction, from giant animals to giant trees to giant coconuts, giant acorns. You name it. All organic matter can petrify when exposed to the right conditions, whether it be a liquid state or a electrical state. High voltage amperage can petrify something almost instantly. And when we talk about the kind of idea of the American Southwest being blasted by some kind of electrical event or several, and then you look at the levels of petrifactions in Oregon, in my Oregon episode, in southeastern Oregon, they found an entire petrified forest that was over 50 miles long. All the trees still standing, crystalline, with the fruit, acorns, whatever exactly, I can't remember.
They were petrified too?
Correct. Yep, standing forest. In states, I found trees that are over 1,000.
Knock that shit down. Just fuck it.
Oh yeah.
Fucking
when organic matter petrifies, it turns into crystals. It turns into all different matter. Actually, they find petrified bodies underground, animals and human alike, and they turn into gold. They turn into silver. They turn into quartz. They turn into copper. So I've postulated in several episodes that the mining industry of today is all biological. So from coal to copper to gold, we're mining giant living organisms. And that's a crazy one.
So the veins of gold are the old veins of
living giant trees, giant creatures. Yeah, giant trees is one I get into. It correlates quite nicely with the vapor canopy material. When you look and study a tropical forest today, 90% of all the life lives on and around the trees. And I think in this pre-age, pre-vapor canopy, that it was kind of like Avatar, that humans, or what would be the closest thing to humans, were living in a vaporous canopy, kind of like a tropical rainforest, where if in a dense tropical rainforest, you never see the sun. The ground is completely covered and shaded all day long. And the atmosphere is completely different than outside of that vapor or that tree line. And that there may have been trees, like the Book of Enoch states, and several other biblical references talk about Book of Giants, talk about it when trees were, titanic, touching the stars, essentially, as others described. And again, the largest representations of that I found is I found over 1,000-foot tall trees that were petrified. And they're in several states, Iowa being my most recent, standing forests. And one article I touch on in the Iowa one, since we talked about the mud flood just generally, the scientists exploring this buried forest says whatever covered this forest filled in slowly, because all the trees are standing perfectly as they were, but they were buried the whole forest plus 15 feet above. So they were digging a well and they found a standing forest. Coal shafts all over America that are sunk to measure the depths of coal, so they know where to start digging, right? Because they want the deepest coal seam they can find. They find full standing trees, several of them. Petrified standing forests are found all over the realm, and they're a huge hint to, I think, what happened.
So what is that? Some sort of electrical phenomena or plasma,
plasma, certainly. I think for it to happen to a forest.
I was just talking to Randall Carlson like 3 days ago about how the reason he's really turned on to this Bendall stuff is because he thinks that comets on impact they're creating a plasma thing with the Earth.
Yeah. They would, of course, they would create a circuit. Yeah, because anode cathode, right? The sun is the ground, and the Earth is the ground, and the sun is the positive charge. They create, just like ether shows this clearly. There's a relationship between sunspots and weather. It's all interrelated, and it's all electromagnetic. So anytime you introduce some kind of iron, generally, right? Because commonly stated, most comets are composed of mostly iron. You're going to have a electrical pathway discharge, because it's going to ground. And if you're flying through ether, again, like a plane, any of these objects that you send through the air, it creates friction, especially something large that's magnetic. It's going to create a lot of energy, not just by its propulsion, but by it moving through the ether. and it's going to have a ton of electromagnetic discharge. And yeah, so there's definitely a lot to be said about that. I get into comets a little bit, but that's definitely something I love talking about, and look forward to doing more videos on later. But yeah, there would definitely be an electrical event. And many of these comets, you know, these reports in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, the good ones that I've shared, they talk about one in Georgia that flew over a mountain, and the mountain erupted volcanically, even though they said no one knew there was any chance of this mountain being volcanic, that the orb flying over created an electrical stirred up because all magma is like a ferrofluid, right? Magma is just like iron in liquid form. And have you ever seen a volcano erupt? Often huge electrical discharge comes out of the volcano. That just shows you the relationship between the sky, the ionization of the sky, and the effect of this discharge. I think volcanism is electric. In my Radium series, I go into it, and many scientists were saying that the sun, because the byproduct of the sun is helium, they were coming to the point that the sun is just a big ball of radium, and that it has direct relation with the radium in the ground, that there's this kind of circuit, and that radium melts. The closer any object is to radium, it melts, breaks it down over time. So you get these large empty pockets that eventually cause cave-ins and earthquakes, and large areas of gas that need to go somewhere, and then the earth fills in that space and is a big cause for, again, earthquakes and seismic events and volcanism. And yeah, the Radium series it's deep, connecting it with so many subjects.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It gives me a new view on the cometary impact too, because it would be sort of like if it lands on a big ice sheet, it would be like fire and ice if it stirred up some volcanoes along the way.
Yeah. You've ever studied those?
I think you need the plasma just to melt the ice. I think that's what kind of Randall's getting at. Just the impact won't do it. The sun can't do it. Just an impact can't do it. You need to introduce that plasma to get rid of these ice sheets as quickly as you got rid of them.
Yeah. Plasma would be one of the only ways to create a heat source that high to rapidly melt that much ice
without affecting the rest of the world. Because there's people that bring in this sun idea. It's like, great, if you need to turn up the temperature on this bitch until the ice sheets melt as quickly as they did, and see what happens to the rest of the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would just be burnt to a crisp. There'd be nothing left.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To say that the ice sheets took thousands and hundreds of thousands of years to recede, and that the sun did all that work, I don't buy for a second. Have you ever studied those ring lakes that go from Nebraska, Iowa, Montana, all the way into the North and South Carolina? Have you ever seen those little lakes that are found all over the place?
No.
They postulate that a huge impact landed on top of an ice sheet, and that shot thousands of car building sized pieces of ice all over those regions I'm discussing, and created all these little lakes, land of 1,000 lakes, all these lakes that are found all over. Could have been, and they have a very definite circular shape, and you can measure the angle at which the object came in and created this circular formation. And in North and South Carolina, Tennessee, there are thousands of them.
Oh yeah, I've heard of the Carolina ones. Yeah.
So I agree with what Darren was saying, that the plasma events on a magnitude beyond our even our wildest dreams. I think events like that definitely happened, and that the American Southwest, along with these petrifactions and the mud floods and all of these things, volcanic eruptions. I mean, there are parts of California and Arizona and Nevada that are covered in hundreds of feet of lava, hundreds and hundreds of feet. In my California episode, they are digging 300 feet below a lava flow and find a completely buried city. They called it America's Pompeii. So cities like that.
Where was that?
California.
Yeah.
But there's cities like that all over the American Southwest. So yeah, I mean, it's just something, if this piques any of your listeners' interest, they can just take one specific thing we talked about that they may enjoy and dig through any of my series, whether it's Radium, Anomalous America, Buried Empires, Ancient Mesoamerica, on and on and on. And you know, whether or not you wholeheartedly believe anything I'm presenting, which is not my goal at all, but you just take a fraction of what I'm presenting, it'll definitely change the way you look at the historical narrative, at least when it comes to America.
Yeah.
Where can people find all that?
The Archivist on YouTube.
That is still available?
1_analog_9 on all social media is my handle. And you can just search the Archivist. I have, I think, like 220 videos. I've only been at this a year, so there's quite a lot of material there. But I recommend, you know, if you like the Radium stuff that we talked about, there's 7 or 8 episodes on that where I go into anti-gravitics, the history of wars, healing springs, blah, 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 blah. If you like the buried past, start with Anomalous America, episode 1 in Alaska, and you'll certainly at least have some new ideas about what could have happened in Alaska.
Right on. Thanks. Yeah, it was good to stay sort of at the higher level. I mean, there's a bunch of examples like on your channels. You read all these articles and stuff. So if people want to get the nitty gritty, there's like thousands of examples. So
yeah, it's tough. Like, you know, with this limited time, we could have just talked about giants. We could have just talked about caves. We could have just talked about petrified giants, trees, and giant lizards, big game hunting. Again, there's so much that I cover. So I'm just trying to paint with a broad brush. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, we'll put all links to that in the show notes. And it was great
We'll have to
chatting.
do this again.
Yeah.
I would like to focus in on some of those other places a little more, zoom in on some of those, because there's some that I know some stuff about and others I don't. So
yeah, I mean, I would love to do a more narrow view on something specific, a topic that you like in one of my episodes. And because every state, I only get to present maybe 20% of what I have. And, you know, they're 2.5 hours long. So there's always lots more on the table.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. This has been good.
Thank you.
right on, Ben. Yeah, this has been fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show, and come back anytime.
Yeah, please. Yeah. And, you know, we're all busy guys. So if there's some particular episode that, you know, captivates your interest in whatever it is, like I mentioned there at the ending, I can go deep on a lot of subjects that a lot of people don't talk about. And it really does take kind of more of a focused explanation. And I could read some examples or read some old newspapers and really kind of show people how these people were writing and the kind of earnest discovery, I think, that was occurring in this time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. We'll do for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben. Thanks. You have a good night. Get back to those kids.
Yep. Love you guys. Pleasure.
Okay. See ya.
Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bye, guys.
That was good. I don't know how I just figured out about this guy.
Yeah.
I don't listen to podcasts either. This is a problem. I feel like you can only do so many podcasts before you just, you know, I feel like I just don't want to listen to them.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean, but yeah, I heard him a couple times on Greg's show, and then Paul, of course, Paul from Jasper was saying, okay, it's time for you guys to connect. So I did. I listened to one of our listeners, and yeah, it's just great. I mean, all the stuff resonates with me. This 1800 stuff, and I love it.
I just went through some of that moon stuff with Randall again, so.
Oh yeah,
I got some more books to go through. I think, you know, he's never going to do it, so I'm just going to have to figure this shit out on my own.
He might.
Well, he might, but I don't know. I get the sense he might not. He's just like, well, you just read this. He really wants to send. So I don't know. He's mentioned all the books and all the stuff I should read, so I'm just going to read it, see what I come up with. You know, he's a busy guy.
I know, but that's a really good. I mean, to me, if he's going on Rumble. And he's in a sort of a partnership way in Rumble or whatever, that would be that presentation that Randall could do on the moon would be a game changer in a lot of ways. I mean, would create a lot of buzz. So that's what I'm just thinking of it as far as like him marketing himself. He's got it ready to go.
It's pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. I mean, we can never get all the way through it. There's so many slides. And
did he present it to the people?
He touched on it. We just got into some of the Masonic fucking blankets for each degree that we have never looked at before. And it's crazy. It's fucking nuts. They've all got the Pleiades on them and ladders going to the Pleiades and behind and just go to the. So I'm telling you, these Masons know some shit.
Oh yeah.
I'd start to think that Randall's not even just like, no, the dude knows some stuff straight up. It's not even research. It's just like, well, I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I check that stuff out on YouTube, guys. I mean, that's where you're going to find all those old giant Smithsonian. The Smithsonian has been gobbling stuff up and changing the history of the Americas for a long, long time. And he just kind of concentrates on the stuff that they were writing before everything changed. So check that out. Other than that, support the show, guys. We need more support. We definitely do. Grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation, whatever you can do to help us keep afloat over here. We're demonetized on YouTube, so it's all you guys. We need you guys to help out when you can. So head over to grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation today, and we'll mention it on the show and make a big deal about you. So that'll be fun for you, fun for us. GrimericaOutlaw.ca for the other podcasts, adultbrain.ca for the audiobooks. Of course, we got another event with Randall coming up in September, and I think it's September 15th to 21st or something like that. And then we got yet another one coming up in November in those Radium hot springs. We'll get you into the Radium water. So contact at thecabin.com. Come to Invermere. We'll fucking toss you in some Radium water. You can get healed up. Hang out with Brandon Powell. Check out the Rocky Mountains. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Policy papers behind enemy lines, 10-ship bills, a cell phone rings, a bomb drops in a city street scene of iPod noise. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. If the digital revolution still got a pulse, we need to revive it and make it a reality. I've hacked into a politician's password and transferred money into several overseas accounts. And as we speak, a supercomputer project is in the works. And if it works, we'll use it to point and click our way to some sort of truth. Either you're in or out, are you game, or is the game over? This must be a glitch in the Matrix. This must be a glitch in the Matrix. A revolutionary dream. It's me versus the machines. Go! Watch out for them laser beams. Climb to the top of the pyramid scheme. Capitol Hill's getting steeper and steeper. Meanwhile, the deck gets deeper and deeper. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. Cause it's gonna take more than hand and eye coordination on your PlayStation. It's gonna take mind elevation. There must be a glitch in the Matrix. There must be a glitch in the Matrix. A revolutionary dream. It's me versus the machines. Go! Breaking from my routine, I dive into my computer screen, swimming in a sea of against the machine. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. Rage against the machine.